The internet is saying that D2C is dead. Are they right? Let's talk about it. By the way, I'm KJ Miller. I'm a founder, lecturer, and content creator. I talk about all things startups, consumer products, venture capital, basically all the good stuff. So if you like all of that, you're in the right place, and be sure to subscribe. So what is DTC? It stands for direct to consumer. And D2C businesses really had a heyday over the last, call it, 15 years, really in the 2010s. Think about businesses like Warby Parker, Glossier, Harry's, Dollar Shave Club, Allbirds. The list goes on. But basically, when we think about D2C brands, we think about these companies that came up and disrupted some space that they were in, whether that was cosmetics, whether that was glasses, basically came into the game and said, we're going to cut out the middleman. We're going to get rid of the retailer. You don't need to find us at Target or Sephora or whomever. We're going to sell directly to you. And by doing so, we cut out a lot of the costs. We, the company, get to keep a lot of the margin, but also we get to pass on a lot of those savings to you. That is the model that so many brands, including mine, Minted Cosmetics, went after in that 2010s period. Minted launched in 2017, so we were right in the thick of the big D2C drive. And when I say big, I mean big. We're talking about billions of dollars that were flooded into e-commerce and D2C brands. But now everyone is saying D2C is dead. I mean, if you believe any of these articles that have come out in the last couple of years, it sounds like D2C is no longer the place to be. And my question is, should we believe that or not? Well, as someone who built a D2C brand and who loves consumer products, I'm here to tell you, I think the answer is no. D2C is not dead, but it is evolving. I'm going to take you through a really great article that I came across in Forbes that I think makes this point really nicely. And of course, I'm going to add in what I've seen in my almost decade of experience running my brand. The article in Forbes is titled, D2C is not DOA, but this retail model must evolve to survive. And it came out in February of 2024, so just a few short weeks ago. Now, the article opens up by mentioning some of those same brands that I mentioned at the top of this video. It says, not so long ago, D2C disruptors were the darlings of retail. In the 2010s, brands like Warby Parker, Casper, Peloton, Dollar Shave Club, and Glossier rocketed to prominence and reveled in the attention from press, public, and private venture capital investment. So like I said, in the 2010s, things were going gangbusters, and I benefited from this with my brand, Minted Cosmetics. The article makes a great point shortly down from that I've been saying literally since we launched in 2017. It reads, D2C rode the tech startup wave that washed across markets over the last decades. Brands overtly hitched a ride on tech. Often the pitch for capital was, this is not a blank company, it's a tech company. And in the case of both D2C and tech, the goal was rapid growth at all costs, with the promise of profitability pushed into the future. Now that paragraph right there sums up so much of why the D2C bubble had to burst at some point. One of the things I remember when I was pitching my company was how many people told us that we really needed to focus on the tech of it all. How are we incorporating tech? How could we compare ourselves to tech? How could we say we were the Uber of this or the Instacart of that? And I remember from the very beginning, I always said, we are not a tech company. We are a makeup company, okay? We are selling lipstick. Yes, we have a website because in 2017, you have to have a website, but we're not a tech company and we're not going to try and sell you that dream. Unfortunately, a lot of people did try to sell that dream and they were very successful at selling that dream. They raised tens of millions, in some cases, hundreds of millions of dollars selling that dream. Companies like Bonobos and Glossier with these huge, massive rounds, and a lot of time talking about the tech, not just the product, not just the lipsticks and the blushes and the pants, but the tech. And tech companies, the thing about tech companies, if you don't know, tech companies are known for really rapid growth. And part of the reason for that is once you've built the underlying tech, it's easy to scale it. So it's easy to go from 1 user to 1,000 users to 50,000 users. Your costs don't grow at the same rate, nor does your labor have to grow at the same rate. For me to go from selling one lipstick to 1,000,000 lipsticks, a lot about my operation has to change. That isn't typically the case in tech, allowing for that really rapid growth. Also, tech companies often benefit a lot from network effects. So every time one more person is using their technology, their software, it actually gets better for everybody. Where in consumer products, it's not typically the case. It doesn't work like that. You buying a lipstick doesn't make my lipstick buying experience better. So there's real risk, and there was real risk in these product companies and these D2C brands trying to build themselves as tech companies because they couldn't grow like tech companies, and they certainly couldn't grow as profitably or as quickly as tech companies. And we've seen over the last few years a lot of these brands really struggle as they've worked to get to profitability. And by the way, I'm no different. I'm not trying to say that I'm any better. What I think is important to talk about is the role venture capitalists really played in this bursting of the D2C bubble. And I am going to get to my point where I say it's not dead. The bubble has burst and brands are evolving, but it's not dead. But I do want to talk about the role that venture capitalists played in this, because I do think that it's important. The reality is those billions of dollars that were pumped into these brands, it came at a cost. And the cost was the expectation of really rapid growth. And like the Forbes article said, growth at all costs. Well, if it's growth at all costs, that's what we're going to do. We are going to pump as many dollars as possible into our growth engine. And for a lot of D2C brands, the growth engine was Facebook. It was Facebook and Instagram ads. And in the beginning, those ads weren't that expensive, so it made sense. But as more and more competition started flooding those spaces, those ads became, they skyrocketed in price. Here's a quick snippet from Forbes. At the same time, marketing costs for D2C brands rose dramatically. Digital channels like Facebook and Instagram, which had been inexpensive at the start of the D2C boom, went up exponentially. So again, VCs very much expected high growth, rapid growth at any cost. And so startups paid the cost. They paid Facebook. Facebook made billions of dollars in this period, not just from the big companies you'd expect, but from tiny little companies spending 30, 40, 50, 70% of their revenue at times. Yes, at one point, Minted hit that. 70% of revenue on marketing ads. Insanity. But it's what was needed in order to hit the high growth that was expected. That was the cost of the venture capital dollars. Then something happened, and that something was interest rates going up. Basically, in the 2022-2023 time period, as the Fed hiked interest rates, money became more expensive. It became more expensive for everybody. And suddenly, venture capitalists became very tight-fisted with their dollars and started asking tougher questions about profitability and started wondering, why have all of these companies made it to these great heights in terms of scale, but still aren't seeing profitability? We thought you throw this money into the marketing funnel, you get really big, and then you become profitable. Turns out you need to have figured out profitability long ago, many millions and moons ago. And that's what everyone started realizing, particularly towards the end of 2022, and definitely by 2023, the jig was up. Here's a quote from Forbes. All of this led to a recalibration of the value of D2C brands. As reported by CNBC, of an analysis of 22 publicly traded D2C companies, more than half have seen a downgrading of 50% or more of their stock since they went public. Others have folded entirely, and still others, like Casper, have exited the stock market and returned to private funds. So the landscape for D2C has changed. For sure. So what does that mean? Well, this is where we get into the advice that I've been giving founders now for the past 3 years. I've been giving them this advice in my course that I teach. I teach a business school course on entrepreneurial ventures and consumer products. I've been giving this advice to the founders that I mentor, to the founders who I have a professional, formal advisor relationship with. I mean, I've kind of been saying it until I'm blue in the face, and now I'm going to say it to you. The D2C game now is about profitability. The era of grow at all costs is gone. It's out the window. Now, look, markets are cyclical. The pendulums swing back and forth. Might we get to a place again where money is cheap, capital is cheap, and VCs and investors are willing to throw their dollars at anything with a cool logo and a fun-sounding name? Maybe. More likely, what we will all take away from this period is that profitability, business fundamentals are still super important. So what that means for founders looking to launch a D2C brand today is that you are more than likely going to need to start smaller. When I was launching my company, the brands that I had as role models were becoming very big very quickly. That was the conversation. That was the conversation I had to be prepared to have with investors. It didn't even occur to me that I could have done this thing without investment because there was no way I could get big quickly by funding on my own. But if I were to launch a consumer product company today, I wouldn't be thinking about huge, massive growth. I wouldn't be comparing myself to the beauty brands out there doing $500 million in revenue a year. I would be thinking about funding myself, using my savings, starting with one product, one SKU, building real demand via social media, using the platforms I've got, for instance, like my TikTok platform where I have 77,000 followers or so, using those sorts of platforms to build real demand with a community that I had grow slow and grow profitably. That would be my approach today. And I think what we're going to see is that is the approach that's necessary in this market. Unless you're a celebrity or, a huge influencer who's already rich and already has millions and millions of people looking at you, because those are the companies that VCs are still willing to back. If you're a celebrity, if you've already got millions of people, looking at you and following you, then they might be willing to throw $3 to $5 million at a product launch. If you're not that, they won't. Believe me, I've seen it. The fact of the matter is, the season we are in right now, VCs aren't touching these sorts of deals at nearly the rate that they were. That doesn't mean that this is a space that you should just abandon. If you have a product that you are passionate about, if you have an idea that you are excited to bring to market, believe me when I say there's still room to get that done. You're just going to have to think about it differently. And by the way, self-funding, I'm using that a bit loosely. Yes, I would use my own savings, and I would maybe potentially reach out to a very small circle of friends and family and ask them about putting in small amounts. I'm talking $1,000 to $5,000, just enough to get my first product run finished. I'm not trying to hire some fancy marketing agency that costs $10,000 a month. I'm not hiring Red Antler or some, ridiculous brand design firm that again is going to charge me $90,000 to design my logo and my website. I'm not doing any of that. I'm focusing on what makes my product special. What are my must-haves for my product? For me, if I were launching Minted again, it would still be the same thing. Shades and pigments that complement deeper skin tones. I can get my first product done on that principle without spending $1 million and certainly without raising $1 million. And that would be my focus today. It would mean I'd be hustling a bit longer, but it would also mean I'd be keeping a lot more of my equity and I'd be growing profitably. So that's my take. That's my 2 cents. I want to know what you guys think. Am I right? Am I wrong? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments. And if you like videos like this, be sure to subscribe. I'll see you next time.